Hello, my name is Klas Skogmar and I work at Arkatay Consulting in Sweden, and I'm a specialist in project program and portfolio management. And now I'm just going to talk a little bit about when you should be agile and when you should not be agile. And this is a problem that many organizations are having. They really don't know when they're going to use agile methodologies and when they're not supposed to do it. If you take a look at the graph here on this slide, it's a very commonly used graph, and it exists, for example, in PMBOK guide. It says that as a project progresses, the influence of stakeholders it decreases, and as the project progresses, the cost of changes increases. What this means is that in the beginning of a project, it's very cheap to change your mind. If you just have an idea in your head, then it's just a matter of rethinking what you have in your head. When you have written things on paper or started to agree with things with stakeholders, then it starts to become a little bit trickier to change things, because then you have started to get an acceptance for a certain idea. When you started to, for example in construction, when you have started to build something, you've done the ground, then it becomes much more expensive, and when you're halfway through your project and when you have built something, then it's much more expensive to change things. The thing is that different types of projects, they have different types of cost curves. So some projects, they become increasingly much more expensive quicker than others. So in the domain of software, for example, doing computer programs, it's very inexpensive even late in the project to change your mind. But in some construction projects, it's very expensive. If you want to move the bridge 1 meter after in the final phases of a bridge project, then it's not a good idea. So what does cost of change, how does that impact agility? Well, if it's very costly to change your mind, then you want to plan to avoid any costly changes. If it's very cheap to change your mind, then you can decide later. And if you can decide later, you can choose to postpone all decisions to later in the project, and therefore you increase your agility if it's very cheap to change your mind later in the project. This is one of the most important aspects of when you should be agile and when you should not. So this is a very important graph to understand. Thank you.